Welcome to Seattle Public Utilities Ask Evelyn Live. We answer your questions about recycling, garbage, compost, and other trashy topics. I'm your host, Becca Fong. And this week's episode, Reduce, Reuse, Recycle, Reflect. This is our 100th episode, folks. Can you believe it? And the 2-year anniversary of Ask Evelyn Live. It's been 2 years since we kicked this off with right before the April 2020 Earth Day. So we thought this would be the perfect opportunity to stop and reflect on exactly how Seattle has become such an amazing, innovative leader in the solid waste industry, and why is this show named after an advice-giving envelope anyway? So as always, Pat's going to join talking fun. Hey, Pat.
Hey, Becca, how's it going?
It's going good. Can you believe it? 100 episodes.
I know. I'm so delighted to be with you after 100 efforts. Here we are still.
I know. Oh my goodness. All of you who are tuning in and watching right now, thank you guys so much. And those of you who watch later, thank you so much for tuning in and keeping us going. Pat and I love hearing from you guys every week, and we just love talking trash. So it's great to have just a new way to connect with you all. So Pat, it's already in the chat. What is our question?
Yeah. Who is Evelyn? Who is this Evelyn character anyway? I mean, where did Evelyn come from, right? Look at you. You've got the clip art to prove it. There she is.
I know. There she is.
Well, I've got a little bit of clip art as well. As you can see, I've posted up here behind me. And this is the original Evelyn the envelope artwork right here out of a 3-ring binder, people. I mean, this was like, this is going back to even pre-digital.
Totally.
So yeah, Evelyn was the envelope.
Evelyn was the envelope, which, I have to say is one of our most common questions is one, am I Evelyn? And I am not Evelyn. Fantastic name, but I am not Evelyn. And Evelyn the envelope, like you see from Pat, like you see behind me, you saw the original envelope, was that Evelyn is part of what a group of fantastic little outreach characters behind Pat called the Recyclettes. Yeah. And we're going to kind of start this journey into why and how Seattle became such an innovative solid waste leader with our journey to where Evelyn came from. So back in 1989, like we're going to go way back.
Yeah.
Like, cue the Scooby-Doo, like time warp music. Is what happened in 1989 is that Seattle really jumped way into the fold with making some really great decisions about the solid waste industry. And as they've done that, I have to say, we were looking back, Pat, right? There were kind of like 3 things we were talking about is that Seattle has been really, really good at creating like really good policies to support the system, figuring out the logistics and operations, right? So programs, collection, all of that stuff, and then being awesome at outreach and education, which is really where it's in, right?
That's right.
So the Recyclettes were kind of an innovative idea. They seem kind of old school because everybody does outreach and education now. But in 1989, that's not really what we did. People would just roll out the service, and if people understood how to use it, great. But you had some really good information about kind of the Recyclettes and where we were in 1989. So
yeah, so in 89, like you say, you're right. There was a huge communications push. The Recyclettes were created. Recycling was new. It was a different kind of program. People had been doing recycling through drop-off stations and drop-off centers throughout Seattle. There were independent outfits. And the solid waste utility, before SPU was created, now we're the combined utility of water, drainage, wastewater, and solid waste. But at the time, it was called solid waste utility. And they actually hired people who managed and ran those independent recycle centers to help Seattle build their recycle program. So that's pretty cool. This is a archive piece of
I love that.
New collection service coming to you. And this is dated November 18th, 1988. So pretty far back in the way back machine there. And that was a request, to customers, to residents to say, hey, we're going to start with a new service here. How many containers do you need? Are you a house or a duplex? So there wasn't even data to understand that at the time.
Right.
So I will tell you a quick story, Becca. I lived with a bunch of my college buddies in a house in the U District at the time, and we checked off duplex because we wanted twice the number of recycle bins for all of our bottles and cans at the time.
Hey, drinking responsibly means making sure that you deal with those empties in the best way possible. So,
And
I
so
think that
then
makes
every
sense.
week, a little truck that looked kind of like this would come down our alleyway, and the driver would hop out and he would go through the crate. He would put all the glass in one bin, the cans in another. The newspaper was mostly newspaper and cardboard. Here's another throwback thing. This is a guide for our contact center, our old Seattle Solid Waste Utility Contact Center. And these are questions that customers might ask.
Oh, sure.
What materials are accepted for recycling?
All
Answer,
right.
newspaper, mixed waste paper, cardboard, glass bottles and jars, aluminum and tin cans. That's it.
There you go. 1989. Where does it go, guide?
Yeah.
Right. There.
We just finished. We're done.
We're done. That's it.
Now, of course, today
it's not one of those.
It's a much bigger, suite of materials and procedures for different materials on the back. And, what do we have? Like 1,200 entries on the Where Does It Go lookup tool?
Yeah.
I don't know. Lots.
Oh, yeah. Well over 1,000 for sure.
Well over 1,000,
I mean, there's probably, actually, we probably do have thousands of items that are listed on the Where Does It Go tool. So way more than just 6.
Well, and it didn't happen overnight. It evolved.
No.
And the 90s were an exciting time for recycling. The 90s were like lots of attention being given to recycling.
Yes.
A lot of community events, a lot of promotion and outreach, as you say. They started where's my other one? The Friends of Recycling, which was a program which, had a whole manual. Like if you wanted to be a friend of recycling, you had to join the club. You couldn't just, so that was a big deal. And over time, the recycle centers started collecting more materials, right? There were more markets. The recycling industry, as we view it, is like from consumers to system, but the system also grew dramatically in the 90s. So, by the time we got to the 2000s, we were on our way. We had plans.
Oh, absolutely. I love For All Seattle here in the comments, who obviously has been recycling for a long time, with some of kind of like the interesting tidbits of how things are sorted, right? Because that has changed a lot because we had policies. So 1989, we started this new service. And then we also banned yard waste from the garbage. So we already began some of that separation into different streams. So we already started recycling as a new service. So you had recycling and garbage, and then we were asking folks to separate out their yard waste, which meant we needed to partner with Cedar Grove at the time to figure out how they could increase their production to handle all of that additional material. So that's really where Seattle has been super innovative, is bringing all of those 3 pieces together. And definitely during the 90s, there's a lot of refinement. I mean, we're still really fine tuning a lot of stuff, but it was leaps and bounds in the 90s. And then kind of the next major milestone was in 1989, right? So we had some really great stuff happening in 1989 there.
Okay.
So that was our very first solid waste comprehensive plan.
You meant to say 98. You said 89, but 98.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
1998.
Yes. Okay. I'm good.
I mean, like a lot of people, 90s are a little blurry. So, I mean.
So here it is, the 1998 On the Path to Sustainability. If you can't see that backwards, Instagram people, that's what it says, On the Path to Sustainability. And this is basically our plan. It was a comp plan for solid waste. Like, what are we going to do with all this stuff that everybody doesn't want? All the packaging, all the discards, all the materials. And that's the other thing that's happening. Like, while we're ramping up our program, marketers and packagers are ramping up their systems too. You look back there's different things that are good and bad about that. Just to talk briefly about that, of course, we've all experienced the tidal wave of marketable materials and over packaging. But the other thing that happened was like an aluminum can in the early 90s weighed like 3 times as much as an aluminum can weighs now. So the industries have done a great job through engineering and lightweighting of materials to reduce the inputs of packaging for a lot of the products. Now there's other companies that put these huge blister packs around their little product, and they're on the other end of the spectrum, right? They're not making advances at all. They're going backwards. But
for sure.
The point is like we have our, the manufacturers and corporations. We have us in the space of like dealing with the waste, and then like you said, we had Cedar Grove, we had Rabanco, which became Allied Waste, which became Republic Services. That's our recycle center in Seattle. Of course, Waste Management, WM, has always been a partner in the area. And now we have Recology as well. So it's, we couldn't do it without the processors or the manufacturers kind of keeping everything in the same categories.
Absolutely. So in 1998, when we had our first solid waste comprehensive plan, it's kind of fun to look through that because there's all kinds of different things in there that seem a little bit laughable. similar to the 89 guide. Like, what is recycling? If you ask anybody, you know, even my kids who are very small, if you ask them what recycling was, they can give you an answer. But in 1989, it was a new concept. In 1998, that plan really laid out a lot of the kind of innovative new things that we were going to do, like diverting organics, right? Like dealing with food waste, dealing with some of the things that we now do through special item pickup, handling electronics, the harder to recycle items, adding even more types of plastics into the commingled system. So in 1998, nobody else was really doing that. And Seattle decided they were going to put it down on paper and create a comprehensive plan. So, which does get updated about every 10 years. So we're going to do a quick plug for you guys to have a chance to comment on the latest one at the end of the show. But 1989, so that really kind of kicked that off, right? And so there's a lot of stuff that's happening there. And then within the 2000s, so we're still kind of ramping up. Things are getting a little bit better. More markets, more materials, better services. So I think you were saying in 89, it used to be, we had, the city was divided into two zones. There was kind of north of the cut, south of the cut.
That's right.
And things were very different, right? Some had commingled recycling bins, some had those 3-bin systems, and those things were starting to come together, right? In 1998, we had a new collection contract, really kind of synced a lot of that stuff up, which became huge. So that meant that all of the Seattle customers really were all doing the same things, more or less. You know,
really,
it was very different before.
It became more of a commingled program citywide. The glass was inserted within. If folks who live in the south of the Ship Canal section of Seattle, in the early years, the first 10 or so years, it was a glass bin separate from everything else in the cart. And then the north end had the 3 crates. We had cans and bottles in the same crate, but then newspaper and paper separate. It was just different. It was hard to message on that. But I think at the time, the utility was trying to, for one, you know, work with multiple companies to try and build the awareness and understanding of recycling collection infrastructure. But eventually it became clear as a utility, as an outreach program, we needed to be able to work on the same, you know, messaging, regardless of whether a person lived north or south, single family, multifamily, business, school, at home. We needed to kind of bring it all together. And that's really, by the time 2005 came along, we were all on board. Matter of fact, I think it was 05 when mandatory collection for, was it 09? Mandatory for yard waste was 09. Yeah.
For food waste organics. But in 05, we had, that was actually in 05, as that system was getting more synced up, there was actually one of, speaking on the policy front, we talked a lot about the logistics, but on the policy front, that was when the city of Seattle banned cardboard, paper, cans, and bottles from the garbage.
That's right.
So essentially they made it mandatory to sort that material in 05, which what those policies do is it's not meant to be prescriptive, but what it does is it creates the floor for the behavior and the service.
That's right.
And so it's like, this is the lowest you can go, folks. Everyone's got to participate at this level. And Seattle is definitely one of the cities that continues to do those innovations. And we'll talk about a couple more of those as we go through the years here. But it's pretty forward thinking in 05. But then a big hit for kind of your sector, Pat, is in the late 2000s, right? So in like 09, we had a lot of policy changes. But before that, one more thing that was driving that in 07, what's really big for all of you like solid waste policy folks out there, we know you're out there, is in 07, we have the zero waste resolution. And that's a lot of words. 2 really cool things came out of that. One is that the city council put a cap on the amount of tonnage that we could send to the landfill every year. And it could never go above 2006 levels. And we have done nothing but continue to drop that level every year. Even with the huge rate that Seattle has grown in population, that amount, that tonnage that's going to landfill continues to go down. The other thing that's really cool is something called the recycling rate. And so that is the percentage of material that is discarded that is being diverted into recycling and composting. And that set the limit at 60%. So what the city council did in this resolution is it gave us goals, right? Like Seattle was down to create some new cool innovative programs. All of the people, the populace in Seattle were down to support that, but this made it real. Right? Like, it was like, all right, here's where we're going. So,
the other thing that Seattle Public Utilities has done, and even before it was SPU, when it was solid waste utility, was they did waste sorts. We would invest in the data. We would invest by hiring the companies to do a comprehensive waste, management and a waste sorting plan. So we knew exactly what percentage of what materials was still in the garbage. And I think, that was one of the things in the mid 2000s that we began to invite the vegetative food waste into the yard waste cart. So it was yard waste only for 15 or more years.
Yeah.
Then food waste was allowed, but it had to be something you could grow in your yard. It could be the apple cores, it could be the lettuce leaves, the kind of vegetative food waste that we all are familiar with. Then in '09, it expanded to receive the full spectrum of food waste: meat, dairy, bones, shells, cooked food, raw food. It didn't matter. As long as it was a food product, it was accepted. And that's still the case today. Of course, in those years after that, we passed the laws that encourage sustainable packaging from corporations. And now we see that in play all the time. We see compostable packaging. We see compostable, flatware and utensils, portion cups, all the little pieces and bits that come in the single-use packaging kind of space are now required to be compostable for dine-in application.
Totally. So it's like all of these things are kind of coming together, right? So, and that's a big part of your work is really working with the commercial sector and figuring out how to get a lot of that organic material out of the garbage and into the organic stream. So
I think it also, that was about the time when the bag ban came across. Now, of course, now we're under a statewide bag ban, which is great because it's, same rules for the entire state. But it was in 2012 when we actually had the official bag ban go into effect. And that started Seattle's work on, reducing plastic bags that were just being given out. You buy a pack of gum, you get a plastic bag. You buy a,
I know.
Whatever. Everything got a plastic bag back then. It was crazy. But now, with a statewide ban, it's citywide and it's statewide. So it's the same for everyone. It's much more easier for folks to kind of be compliant with as a store and also be aware of what the situation is as consumers, regardless of where you are in the area.
Totally. And there's so many things that Seattle has led the way with the bag ban, the EPS, which you guys often know by styrofoam.
Yeah.
There was a comment earlier about how someone really enjoys the on demand. That's not the right term. It's
upon request. Yeah.
Upon request. Thank you. So upon request for utensils. And it's like Seattle has really led the way on that. The ban on straws, compostable utensils, all of those things have kind of been the roadmap for other cities, other counties, other states to really kind of adopt a lot of that work. I do want to answer one question here or one comment here in the chat. It was asking about green cones. And that was actually one thing that actually was really good. So that's a really good example of something that we were doing in the late 90s and early 2000s is really encouraging getting as much of that organic material out of the garbage as possible and really encouraging home composting. So we used to give away, green cones. We gave away some compost bins. We did a lot of training about how to build your own home compost piles.
We used to build worm bins. That was a big project through Seattle Tilth. We would do build those plywood worm bins, and those are great, man. Those were like the red wigglers. They still are great. People are welcome to continue to do that. It's just so darn easy to just put it in the green cart nowadays.
And exactly. I mean, I know you and I are both pretty avid composters, and there's still some materials that I compost, and I did for a very long time, but with the kind of ease of using the organic surface, I definitely have cut down on that. But that just goes to show how many innovative ways Seattle Public Utilities has been willing to be hey, let's try this, right? We know that organics in the garbage produces a lot of methane, and we want to figure out a solution, even though we don't have a huge full-scale program to launch right now. Let's see how we can do it on a literal grassroots scale, which is pretty awesome. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So
we were trying, many strategies back in the 90s to try and divert food waste. Before all the full spectrum of food waste was allowed in the green cart, we were doing green cones and worm bins and trying to reduce food waste in many ways. And we continue to do that, of course. Food waste prevention, only buy what you need, eat all the food that you prepare, or store it appropriately so it's good enough to eat later. All those sort of strategies are still in play. They're still important because we still have the recent numbers, I think, were 30% of the waste stream is still organic, and 30% of that is edible food today still. So we have a lot to do. We have the tools now. We have the infrastructure and the collection service available, but we still need behavior and awareness to kind of continue on its path.
Absolutely. That's why we still got Evelyn the envelope to answer all of the questions that come out about all these different things, because we do have the policies, we do have the programs, and that's why we're here. That's why Pat and I are here, right? And all the people that we work with is that we're here to help answer your questions, make a lot of these programs more accessible, figure out what resources you need. I love the comments that are coming up in the chat. It's we are really looking at all kinds of innovations, from waste prevention grants to Pat and I work on with WM a Rethink Waste grant, which offers like small amounts of money to small businesses and community organizations to fund projects. So we're always looking for like new and interesting ideas, and we love hearing from you guys. So should we get through kind of like the last couple of things that have been really cool in like the last like 5 years have been pretty interesting. Some major things I would say in like 2015 is we banned food waste and recyclables from the garbage. And again, what that did was it created that floor. Like at the basic minimum, everybody needs to divert their food and recyclables from the garbage and put them into either the compost stream or the recycle stream. And so you and I have been really focused on that, as well as a lot of our coworkers. So, and then you have been doing a ton of work in the commercial sector.
Well, on the commercial side, that has been helpful. The ban to keep organics and food waste out, because there's a lot of workplaces out there that were not food service businesses, but they had a pretty steady flow of food waste through the employee, meals on site, or just some portion of their operation had an organics and food waste mix. So by banning organics and food waste from the waste stream, we had previously required restaurants to do composting, but now it applies to everywhere. A dental office or a bank branch or whatever. If you have a break room that has a coffee maker going, there's coffee grounds every single day going in there. And so there's that, and the banana peels and apple cores and the food that people don't finish on their lunches and whatnot, and all the compostable packaging they might get when they go out to lunch. I mean, there's a lot of material at every workplace. And so I'm always, promoting the green business at seattle.gov email to try and remind folks, just send a note, let us know. We'll help you get connected for collection service, because it's actually banned from the garbage. And our whole inspection team, they're always out there looking for situations, looking for problems, trying to help customers recognize, you've got stuff in your garbage. It's not supposed to be there. Recyclables should be in your recycle cart. Compostables can go over here in your compost cart. Let's get you set up. So, there's thousands of service sites across the city. And so we continue to work with as many of them as possible on an ongoing basis. But it's coming back to, all of us, it's education and outreach. And it's so nice to be able to communicate that it's the same model, the Where Does It Go model, whether you're single family, multifamily, the school program's not different. It's this, the commercial program is this, even you go to large venues, the convention center, they follow the same guidelines, places like that. So it's really it's nice to all be on the same page.
Absolutely. And I wanted to kind of wrap up our 100th episode in this look back, this reflection on kind of like what we've been doing, how far we've come. The comments in the chat right now, you guys, are really great. Like, I think all of these things that are forward thinking, it takes folks like you, are really a big part of it too. Like, we talked about the policy, we've talked about the programs, talked about outreach and education. There's also been the people. I always tell folks, as far as like the different utilities, Pat, you said at the top, it's like, it's us, solid waste, drainage, and water. And we are the people powered utility, right? The other ones have pipes and things that convey that material. But really what makes solid waste work is people, which is what makes it super dynamic, but also can make it really challenging, because each of us individually gets to make a choice about all of that stuff, right? And where it goes and how we sort it. And the comments in the chat are fantastic. Those of you who are putting those in there, it's so great that you are aware, and I'm sure are talking to other folks in Seattle and advocating and just demonstrating what you need to do, right? We've got good policies, we've got good systems, we've got good outreach and education, thanks to you guys too, and your input on how we can make our programs better. And then you guys are doing it every day, which is awesome. I think
since day one, since 1988, when the first letter went out to folks that said, important information inside from Seattle Solid Waste Utility. It's every single piece that's made up our diversion efforts and reduced our garbage flow. It's been an item in someone's hand, and they've had, we have worked to try and make sure they have access to services, and then they have to make that choice. They have to be informed, educated, and on board, which we continue to work with folks on that. But every single item is in someone's hand at some point, and they have to drop it in the right bin. They have to put it in the right place, the right dumpster, the right cart, the right bin. Everybody has a role to play, and everybody plays a role. So there you go.
Absolutely. All right, folks, thank you so much. 100th episode, right?
Yay, Evelyn.
It's amazing. So back to our question. Evelyn is the advice giving envelope, and we will keep that ethos going from the very beginning, from 1988. Like, we want to hear from you, because you guys help, it's a people powered utility. So we need to hear from you guys, what's working, what you're interested in. and that will just keep things going. And that
And that's-
reminds me, so the solid
That's right.
waste comprehensive plan,
That's right.
we're undergoing a revision. It was a couple years late due to COVID, like so many things. But it is out right now. And if you go to our main website, seattle.gov/utilities, you will find a link to the solid waste comprehensive plan. And so you can also provide some input and have a look at it. It's a dense document, but I encourage you guys to have a look at it. It is pretty cool. When you look back at the original one that Pat showed from 1998.
This is the original one. Look how the new one's probably a little thicker, I think.
It's a little bit more robust.
But it's the same idea. The same work is going into that. The same, opportunity for all the customers to engage and provide feedback and, direction and support and guidance. I mean, we want this to continue to be the people-supported program that you described, Becca. That's a good way.
Absolutely. So thank you guys. And I really am just so appreciative of the engaging chat. That's so great. I love to hear from you guys. Thank you for all that you guys do every day out there to kind of support this great solid waste system that we have in Seattle. It's pretty awesome. So, and remember, this show's run on your questions. So make sure that you keep them coming. You can send them on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Send us an email at askevelyn@seattle.gov. And tune in every Wednesday, 1:30. We love seeing you guys and love hearing
100 down, 100 or more down. To go.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in. It has been super fun. It is definitely the highlight of my week. I get to chat with all of you. I get to chat with you, Pat. It's awesome. I love it. This is like one of the best parts of my job.
Same here.
All right, folks. Well, we will see you next week for our 101 episode. And with that, I'm Becca Fong. Life simpler with less stuff.
And I'm Pat Kaufman. Remember to recycle right. I'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.